Growing up, I always knew that I was different from my twin sister. We were nothing alike. It's as if I was a dog and she was a cat. She had everything going for her, the looks, the height, and the charm. She was always the one who stood out in a crowd, and I was always the one in her shadow. She was tall, beautiful, and everyone was drawn to her. She had that wow factor that made people stop and stare. I, on the other hand, was short, only 5 feet 1 inch, and never felt like I fit the mold. I had always struggled with my self-image because I couldn't help but compare myself to her, not just in terms of looks, but also in personality. She was outgoing, confident, and the life of the party. I was the complete opposite, reserved, quiet, and just a bit awkward. The hardest part was not even realizing why I felt so out of place. I spent so many years wondering what I was doing wrong, why I could never seem to be like her. It wasn't until I turned 22 that I found out I was on the autism spectrum. That discovery helped explain a lot of my social struggles and the isolation I felt. But I also couldn't help but wonder how things might have been different if my parents had noticed earlier. The problem wasn't just the differences between my sister and me. It was how my parents treated us. It was like they had this invisible bond with her that I could never get close to. Since we were kids, they made it clear my sister was the golden child, the one who got all the praise and attention. For every 20 cute pictures of her growing up, there were maybe 2 or 3 of me. It felt like my life was overshadowed by her. And when I did get attention, it was only when I was next to her. And then came the issue with money. Imagine this, they had $100 to spend on clothes. My sister would get $80, and I'd get the remaining $20. They justified it by saying she was prettier and got more attention, so she deserved nicer things. I was invisible to them, and it hurt. The worst part, I was into sports, I played on a team, I worked hard, but my parents never once came to watch me play. They always made time to watch her cheerleading performances, though. It wasn't just about sports or clothes. It was a constant pattern of unfair treatment. Growing up like this was tough. I didn't just dislike my childhood. I absolutely hated it. The anger I felt towards my sister for getting everything I wanted ate away at me for years. Deep down, I knew it wasn't her fault, but I blamed her anyway. It wasn't until therapy that I worked through those feelings and realized I didn't need to hold on to that anger anymore. By the time I was 15, I started counting the days until I could leave. At 18, I finally did. My parents had thrown me a birthday party, but it felt more like a celebration for my sister than me. They gave her a $1 gift card to a fancy designer store and gave me a $100 gift card to a bookstore. They tried to justify it by saying that the $100 card would allow me to buy things I liked, just like the $1 card would for her. I saw right through it. They had no idea how badly I wanted out. And when I told them I was leaving, they offered to help me, but by then, I had had enough. I left that day, packed up my things, and moved to a completely different city, far away from them. I even picked a place I didn't like, just to be farther away from everything. I changed my phone number, blocked them on social media, and set up my email to automatically delete any messages they sent. I didn't want to hear from them anymore. But then, a few days ago, out of nowhere, I received a message from my dad on Facebook. My first instinct was to delete it without reading, but something made me open it. It had been months since I heard from them. He apologized, saying they had messed up big time as parents and asked if we could start fresh. He suggested that I come over for dinner so we could get to know each other again. But as the people we've become now, not who we were back then. I haven't replied yet. I'm stuck between wondering if I should give them a chance to start over or just continue with my life and ignore this message. It's been 3 years since I left, and in that time, my life has gotten so much bigger, and I've learned to move on without them. But now, they're asking for a new beginning, and I'm not sure what to do. I'm unsure if I'm ready to reopen old wounds. Should I consider them again, or is it better to keep moving forward without them? That's where I'm at right now. After receiving that message from my dad, I spent days thinking about it. I couldn't stop the thoughts swirling in my head. What if they really had changed? What if this was their genuine attempt to make things right? On the other hand, I also asked myself, what if it's just another attempt to ease their own guilt, with no real intention to change? These mixed feelings kept me stuck, unsure of how to move forward. It felt like I was at a crossroads. facing two possible paths, one where I let them back into my life and take the risk of being hurt again, and another where I stick to the boundaries I had created and keep them out for good. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I gave them a chance, I might regret it. At the same time, I had worked so hard to build my life without them. The thought of opening myself up to that hurt again made me hesitant. I also found myself thinking about my sister. We were supposed to be twins, but we never really shared that bond. I had always felt like I was in her shadow, and over time, I started to resent her for things that weren't even her fault. She didn't ask for our parents to favor her, but it sure felt like it. Growing up, I blamed her for everything: the favoritism, the attention, the love that always seemed to be directed at her. But as I got older, I realized it wasn't her fault. She was just as much a victim of our parents' neglect and favoritism as I was. Still, that didn't make it easier to deal with. I reached out to my therapist about everything. We talked through the emotions I was feeling and the tough decisions I had to make. She helped me process all the anger and resentment I had built up over the years. But when it came to the decision about whether or not to let my parents back into my life, I still wasn't sure. When I told my therapist about the message, she offered some advice. She suggested that I take small steps and not make any big decisions in a rush. It wasn't about forgiving them immediately or forgetting what they had done. It was about making sure that if I chose to engage with them, it would be on my terms. It wasn't about them. It was about me protecting my well-being. I needed to be in control of the situation, not them. The advice was helpful, but the reality was still hard to face. I had spent so many years being neglected and feeling invisible. Even now, as I thought about reconnecting with them, I couldn't help but feel the weight of all those years of hurt. I had created a new life for myself, one that didn't rely on their approval or love. I didn't want to go back to a place where I felt small and unimportant. But as time passed, I began to feel like maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to start healing. Maybe it didn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe there was a middle ground where I could explore what a relationship with my parents might look like now. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but it could be a start. I decided to reply to my dad's message. It wasn't going to be a yes, let's start over message, but I figured I owed it to myself to at least hear him out. If they were really serious about wanting a fresh start, they needed to be honest. I needed answers. I needed to understand why they had treated me the way they had, and why they had chosen my sister over me for so long. I told him I was willing to listen, but I needed real answers. No excuses, no vague apologies. I needed to know why they had acted the way they did, and if they were truly remorseful, I needed to hear it from them. I wasn't going to let them sugarcoat the past. If they couldn't be honest with me, then I wasn't interested in starting anything. To my surprise, he responded the next day with a long message. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it was real. He started by explaining how they had only planned to have one child, and when they found out they were having twins, they were overwhelmed and unsure about what to do. They never imagined having two children, and the idea of raising both of us was more than they felt capable of handling. As hard as it was to hear, my dad admitted something that floored me. They had seriously considered giving one of us up for adoption. And guess who they were planning to send away? Me, apparently. They had chosen me because I was smaller and didn't have blue eyes like my sister. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They had gone as far as setting everything up with an adoption agency. And it wasn't until the last minute that the couple backed out after meeting both of us and realizing they couldn't split us up. They even considered putting me in foster care, but in the end, they couldn't bring themselves to make that decision. And so they decided to keep us both. But according to my dad, they never truly got over the guilt of their initial choice. They thought raising me was some kind of favor they were doing for me. And because of that, they never put in the effort to treat me equally to my sister. Everything I did was seen as taking something that rightfully belonged to her. Their reasoning was twisted. They thought that if they treated us equally, it would hurt my sister. She had grown used to having more, and any move to give me the same treatment would have been unfair to her. It felt like they had no regard for how much it hurt me, justifying it as a way of protecting her from the pain of losing her privileges. I had always felt like I wasn't wanted, like I was just the afterthought, the second choice. This revelation left me reeling. It explains so much about why my childhood had been so painful. but it didn't make the picture any prettier. I still didn't feel like they truly wanted me. And it still hurt that they had considered giving me up. I wasn't sure how to process all of this. But I knew one thing: I wasn't the same person I had been years ago. I had grown, I had learned, and I wasn't going to let their past mistakes define me. I sat back and thought about my options. Do I let them back in? Do I try to repair something that was broken beyond repair? I wasn't sure. But I knew that it was going to be a long, hard journey. I needed time to think. And, as always, I turned to my therapist for guidance. What I did next would be determined by what was best for me, not what was best for them. I spent the next few days reflecting on everything. The emotional floodgates had opened, and I was overwhelmed with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, I felt angry at my parents for their past actions. It was hard to digest the fact that they had been willing to give me away simply because of my physical appearance. The whole situation felt like a betrayal that I couldn't easily forgive, even with the new context that my dad had given me. But on the other hand, I also found myself questioning the fairness of it all. It wasn't like they had been terrible parents to me every single day. They did raise me. They provided for me. They were present in the sense that they gave me food, shelter, and basic needs. But the emotional neglect was so deep. The favoritism, the way they always favored my twin sister, the way they made me feel invisible, it had left scars on me that went far beyond what I could even put into words. The truth was, I had always wanted to feel loved by them, to feel like I mattered. As a child, I spent so many nights wishing they would see me, just see me, the way they saw my sister. I was a person, not just someone who was there, but they never saw it that way. And it had left me with a feeling of unworthiness that I carried well into my adulthood. Yet, here they were, reaching out after all this time, wanting a new beginning, wanting to make up for what they had done. It sounded like they were really trying to make things right. But how could I believe them? How could I trust that their change was genuine after all these years of neglect? I knew I needed to take my time with this decision. After all, I had been living without them for 3 years now. 3 years where I had built a life on my own. I had friends who loved and supported me, a job I was passionate about, and I had started to find my own voice, my own sense of identity. Their absence in my life had allowed me to heal in ways I didn't even realize. The freedom I felt, the peace, was something I didn't want to lose again. But part of me, the part that wanted closure, was tempted to give them a chance. I wasn't a child anymore. I didn't need their approval to feel validated. But I had to admit that deep down, there was a part of me that still wanted a relationship with them, not for them, but for me, for my own healing. Could I let go of the past enough to move forward with them in my life, in some capacity? Was it possible to rebuild trust and have a healthy relationship, or would it just be more of the same old toxic behavior? I decided that I couldn't make this decision alone. My therapist had been guiding me through this whole journey, and I needed her insight more than ever. I made an appointment with her to discuss everything. As much as I had done the work to heal and rebuild myself, this was something I couldn't figure out on my own. I needed to talk through it with someone who understood the complexity of the situation. When I saw her, I was ready to dive deep into all the questions I had. I wanted clarity. I wanted to know if I was making the right decision by even considering reopening the door to my parents. The fear of being hurt again was real, but the need for resolution, for closure, was something I couldn't ignore. We talked about the importance of setting boundaries and protecting myself from the same patterns that had hurt me in the past. She emphasized that healing didn't mean letting go of my boundaries, but finding a way to stay true to myself while exploring what a potential relationship with them could look like. We also discussed the concept of forgiveness, not as a way to condone their actions, but as a means of freeing myself from the anger and bitterness that had been weighing me down for so long. It was a powerful conversation. I realized that while I couldn't change the past, I could choose how to approach the future. I had the power to decide whether or not I wanted to allow my parents back into my life. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me, and only if it felt right. That night, I wrote a message to my dad. I didn't give him a definitive answer. I didn't say, yes, let's start over, but I told him I was willing to listen. I told him that if they truly wanted to make amends, They needed to be honest with me. No more excuses. No more pretending that everything could be fixed with a simple apology. I wanted to hear the truth, the raw, uncomfortable truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next day, my dad responded again. This time, he was more open, more vulnerable. He apologized for the years of neglect, for the favoritism, for making me feel like I wasn't good enough. He admitted that they had been selfish, focused only on my sister, and never gave me the attention or love I deserved. He said that they had made terrible mistakes, and he regretted it deeply. His words were shocking, but in a strange way, they were exactly what I needed to hear. I was still processing everything, but I realized that this wasn't just about my parents. It was about me, about my healing, about my journey, and I had a choice in how to move forward. But even though I was hearing the things I had wanted to hear for so long, I couldn't help but wonder, were they really sorry? Or was this just another attempt to ease their guilt? Could I trust them again? I didn't know. But for the first time in years, I felt like there was a small crack in the wall that had been built between us. As I sat there, staring at my phone, I knew that I wasn't ready to fully open up to them yet. I still had a lot of healing to do. But for the first time, I felt like there was a possibility, however small, for something to change. Something real. I wasn't ready to forgive them completely, but I wasn't completely shutting them out either. It was a start, a tentative step towards rebuilding something broken. The path ahead was still unclear, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had a choice. The choice was mine, and that gave me a sense of control that I hadn't felt in a long time. And so, with that realization, I took a deep breath and made a decision. I would continue to take things one step at a time, listen to my heart, and protect myself, no matter where the journey took me. The days after I responded to my dad's message felt like a whirlwind. Part of me felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing if I should jump or turn back. The decision I had made, to even consider letting my parents back into my life, was one of the hardest choices I'd ever made. But it was also the first time in my life I truly felt in control of the situation. I kept thinking about the past, about all the hurt, the neglect, and the way my parents had treated me for so many years. The favoritism, the constant reminder that I was second best. It had taken a toll on me in ways I hadn't fully realized until I started unraveling all the emotions with my therapist. But now, with my dad's message, I had the chance to rewrite the script at least a little. In the days following my message, things felt different. It was as though a subtle shift had taken place. I wasn't sure if it was just me, but I felt like I was moving towards something new, something better. It wasn't a straight path. I was taking baby steps, but at least it felt like I was making progress. Then, an unexpected turn of events took place. My sister, the golden child, reached out. The last time we had talked, I was leaving home, and I never really expected to hear from her. After all, she was the one who had always been in the spotlight, always the one who received all the attention. I assumed she wouldn't care about me or my struggles, but here she was, sending me a message. It was simple at first, just a "Hey, how have you been?" It caught me off guard, and I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her entirely. After all, hadn't she always been the one getting the better treatment from our parents? Why would I want to open up to her now? But there was something in the tone of her message that made me pause. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it felt different. I decided to reply, just to see where the conversation would go. And when we talked, it was surprisingly honest. She admitted that she hadn't fully understood the extent of what I had gone through. She never realized how much our parents' favoritism had affected me. In a way, it was like a light bulb had gone off for her, and she started seeing things from my perspective. I think a part of her had always been caught up in the idea that everything in her life was perfect, while I had been the one left in the shadows. But hearing me talk about my feelings made her realize just how deeply her own actions and the actions of our parents had impacted me. The conversation wasn't without its awkward moments. There were long pauses, and I could tell she was uncomfortable. But for the first time, it didn't feel like we were competitors anymore. It felt like two people who were just trying to understand each other. We didn't solve everything in one conversation, and we didn't become best friends, but it was a start, a small, hesitant step in the right direction. With my sister, I didn't expect everything to be fixed overnight, but that conversation gave me a sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for a relationship between us. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but I felt like we could start to bridge the gap that had been there for so long. Meanwhile, the conversations with my parents continued. They seemed genuine, their apologies feeling more sincere with each passing day. They kept talking about their regrets, how they now understood the depth of the harm they had caused, and while part of me wanted to scream at them, to yell about all the years I'd spent feeling overlooked and unloved, I couldn't ignore the fact that they were trying to change. They were trying to make things right. I met with them one evening. It was surreal. Sitting across from them at the same dining table where I had spent so many years feeling invisible, they talked, they apologized, they expressed their remorse, and I listened. It wasn't an easy conversation. There were moments when I wanted to walk away, when the anger that had been building up inside me for so many years felt like it would explode. But I stayed. I chose to listen. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't a tear-filled reunion where everything was forgiven, but it was progress. It was a crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. And for the first time, I felt like I had some control over how things would move forward. After that, something unexpected happened again, just when I thought everything was starting to settle. I received a job offer, an incredible opportunity, in a city far away. It was a dream job, something I had been hoping for. It was a chance to build a life on my own, away from the shadows of my past. And I knew in my heart that I had to take it. So I packed up my life and left. I left behind the family that had hurt me, but I also left behind the uncertainty and the pain. I was starting fresh, in a city where no one knew my past. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was taking control. I was choosing my own path. As for my family, we're in a strange place right now. It's not all resolved. It's not a perfect situation, but we're talking. There's communication, which is more than I could have said a few months ago. The past isn't forgotten, but I'm learning to accept it. I'm learning to accept that my parents were flawed, that they made terrible mistakes, but that doesn't mean I have to carry their weight anymore. I'm not the same scared kid I was. I'm stronger now, more confident, and more aware of my worth. I've learned to set boundaries, and I'm not afraid to protect myself anymore. Whatever happens with my family, whatever decisions I make, I know it's about me now. It's about my healing. It's about moving forward. I'm starting this new chapter in my life with hope and courage. The road ahead is still uncertain, but I'm ready to face it. I'm ready to make my own choices and build the life I deserve. No more living in the shadows. No more being second best. It's my turn now, and I'm going to make the most of it.